If you're considering a traditional program like BJU Press that has, 170, 180 days worth of lessons in a school year, but you want to do school 4 days a week and you want to have that fifth day for flexibility, that is what we do for our language arts and most of our other main independent subjects in core curriculum. But for today, I'm going to be sharing how we do BJU Press, the 4th grade and the 6th grade, how we do it 4 days a week. And I do want to stress, this is not the online class. I have never done their distance online learning classes. This is strictly just parent-led with, I have the teacher guide and they have the textbooks, and we work on our own independently. So we have here the teacher's edition for both 4th and 6th grade, and then here's the student workbook. This I 100% recommend getting. Whether you feel confident in teaching grammar and teaching writing or not, I absolutely recommend getting this because I'll just show you real quick. I'm not going to do a whole in-depth look in this teacher guide, but just to give you a quick idea. So here is what the student workbook looks like. This page, it's exactly like this. Obviously, this has the answers in it, but this is what you would be teaching. Again, it's just going to have the information, the answers, and be a smaller copy of what their student workbook looks like. So that is English 4. This is the current version of English 6. There is a new updated version of English 4. I don't have that, but I did look into the samples and the teacher guide and things like that just to see kind of how it compared. So I'll talk about this more towards the end, but if you're getting English 6, this will be exactly what it will look like. If you're getting English 2 through 5, grades 2 through 5, it's going to be an updated version. But again, I'll kind of discuss what it's going to look like towards the end. My daughter actually tears out her pages. They're perforated and they're hole punched in case you want to put them in a binder. She likes to do that. She just prefers to have like one sheet of paper that she's working on rather than working out of the entire textbook. My other daughter in 6th grade, she just, powers through and it doesn't really matter. She just, works out of the next page. So the English 6 is going to be set up the same exact way. The teacher guide is going to look the same way. And I do want to get in real quick. So how we do 4 days a week, because that is what the point of this video is, but I feel like I can't just get into it without sharing and showing kind of all the aspects of it, at least quickly. Start off with grammar, and then it's going to go to writing, and then the chapter will just focus on grammar, and then just writing, grammar, writing, grammar, all the way up, and there are 16 chapters, and I'll show you this as well so you can see it in the 4th grade. They're going to be all the same though, and I have noticed there is some overlap, and I'm going to do a video showing how I have my daughters kind of work on certain things together. So sentences, personal narrative, obviously in 6th grade they require more. They expect more of you than a 4th grader, but they're going to be a little bit similar. Nouns, this is writing a newspaper editorial. This is writing a friendly letter. Verbs a week. There's 160 lessons, and if you calculate that out, it's not quite in a traditional school year. It's not quite 4 days. So I said, well, let's figure this out. So I went through, and as you can see here, it will say chapter 1, lesson 1, and most of the time the lesson is a front and a back lesson. It's just one front page, and half the first page is honestly like instruction and review from the actual lesson. So she does the guided practice, and then the back is independent practice. So as you can see, it goes on quite nicely. Again, this is a grammar section. So at this point, she's not doing any writing. And so if you come to the back here, after this, it's chapter 1 review, and that is considered a lesson 10. Well, if you get the entire course, it will come with tests, but I didn't get the test. I just got this, and I use these as a test. So instead of getting the tests, which I think there's like there's probably 16 tests or something like that, I'd assume, since there's 16 chapters. And then that would add even more days that we would need to work and get things done. I just said we're going to use these as tests, so that each chapter has a chapter review, and then it's going to have a cumulative review. So it's going to cover everything they've learned thus far in the course. So that is what they've been doing for their test. And then when they get to this is chapter 2, this is the writing part of the personal narrative. And I'll talk about that in just a second of how we kind of condense that. But as you can see here, here's chapter 2. It is a review and cumulative review. So this is lesson 19 and this is lesson 20. I tell them, okay, at the end of the chapter, you're going to do chapter 2, the chapter review and the cumulative review as if it were a test. So it's 4 pages that they're doing in one day, but that knocks out 2 lessons. So that helps cut things back. So just by doing that, it automatically cuts out like 15 lessons, because instead of saying, okay, we're going to take one day to do this lesson and then we're going to take another day to do this lesson, getting them done all at one day, that subtracts 15 days. And I say 15 because chapter 1 doesn't have a cumulative review, it just has a chapter review. And so there's 16 total and there's 15 cumulative reviews. So that cuts it down to 145 lessons, from 160 to 145. So that was really helpful as well. So then let's say we're going to here's a writing chapter. And this kind of cuts back. This is where I cut back as well. So if you see here, they are doing, what are they doing in this one? They're doing persuasive writing. So on here will be lesson 31. And I will go over this with these are the ones that we do together. Their grammar, my girls are pretty independent with. If they have questions, of course I'll go over it, but writing is what we do together. And I actually use the course book for this. I teach directly out of this, and it is very helpful. So this is lesson 31. She actually did this herself because this is independent. And then lesson 32, we would go over this together, persuasive writing, go over the front and the back. And then we would talk about propaganda. We would combine some of these lessons, because honestly, sometimes just reading and then answering a couple questions, that maybe took 10 minutes. So they have a longer attention span than that. So I believe we did combine these two, and we did what propaganda tactics are, and then we went through these exercises. So that would cover 2 lessons in and of itself. So it goes from lesson 33 to lesson 36. She actually tore out one of the lessons, and I'll show you here in the teacher guide so that you can see how it kind of corresponds. So this is what this would look like. I would read this with my daughters and go over that. So as you can see, that's what they're looking at. This is what I'm looking at, and it corresponds exactly together. Okay, so then the next lesson I would look at, and it was the planning, and so she had to kind of do like an outline. So this was torn out, that's why you don't see it, but this would be lesson 34. So we spent a whole lesson doing that. And then lesson 35 it's blank because it's not in their actual book. They're going to be doing a rough draft. So that would be lesson 35. Then lesson 36 is revising the rough draft. And this is where I actually combine several lessons together, because they have one lesson for revising. They give a good revising checklist. I love this. This is really good, by the way. It's very helpful for them. And then a proofreading checklist. We just kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I don't know if that's the exact proper appropriate way, but for us it has been working to just, look and have we indented and used appropriate capitalization, punctuation, spelling. We do that at the same time. So we really just make one good, she does her rough draft, we make a really, really good edit together, we work on it together, and then we make the final draft. And I just, I'm not interested at this age. Maybe later if she needs it for more heavier writing and things like that, we would do multiple drafts. But at this age, she does a rough draft, we work on it together, and then she does the final draft. So that combines lesson 37 and 38, or I'm sorry, 36 and 37. And then 38 is literally just presenting it out loud. Well, we don't need to take up a whole lesson. Once they do that, I don't count that as a lesson. She will just present that out loud to us. That just takes a couple minutes, her and my other daughter will. So I consider once they've written their final draft and I looked it over, then that's done. So we're still doing the lesson as far as, saying it out loud, but we are not spending a whole day on that. She would do this independently, and then in another part of the day, she would say her persuasive essay or speech or whatever it was, whatever the paper was, she would read it out loud for us just to practice those public speaking skills. So when you're doing it that way, it really cuts back a lot of the lessons, and it's much, much more doable to have it done in 4 days. So just to kind of summarize, I will do a flip through of the course so that you can get a good look at what the course looks like. But just to summarize, we don't do the tests that it comes with. So if we're just working out of the book, there's 160 lessons. We do pair up the chapter review with the cumulative review, and that takes out about 15 lessons. So you're down to about 145. And then for all of the writing workshops that they do, like this was write specific instructions, planning, things like that. We combine the revising draft with the proofreading draft. It's all one draft, and that, as you can see here, lesson 56 was proofreading, lesson 55 was revising. And that cuts back on the writing portion too. And then sometimes even within that writing portion, we will combine the steps if it goes pretty quickly. And again, here is lesson 57 was preparing for oral publishing. So it's giving a oral presentation, and that is something that she just did one evening. So by doing things like that, doubling up some of the lessons, and not even necessarily doubling grammar lessons, not saying that, but just doubling, making the test, the chapter review and cumulative review, a test itself, and combining that and tweaking the writing a little bit. Those are all things that you can do to make sure that you are working just 4 days a week on this. And in case you're wondering, like, where did this come from? Why did she do this? We're not that far ahead in the book. I'm a little bit, we're kind of doing the writing assignments out of order, so that's why it looks like that. But yeah, it's been working so well. So far, so good for us. This is our first year using BJU, and so I wanted to have a really good idea of like how we had it, how it was working for us, kind of got into our groove, and we're doing pretty well. This is obviously, BJU's been around forever. It's very thorough for its grammar. It's well known for its writing and grammar, and it's just a solid program. So I do appreciate, this is kind of a side note, that they really break down the writing process, because other programs we used have been so vague. But they always show like what a sample from a child, what theirs looks like, so that they have an idea to go off of. And I'm telling you, we use that so much. And they walk you through each step of the writing process. For every different type of writing that they are doing, there are different exercises. They walk each step through. And again, you're always going back to that original, that model that they used from this. It's a fictitious child, obviously, but they're going back to that, and it has been so helpful. So we're really enjoying their writing program. Here in the back, there's some extra resources, a built-in thesaurus and things like that, some writing tips, how to do outlines, so in case they need those. But you have those in the teacher's guide as well. Commonly misspelled words, contractions. So they just have some extra things as well. Here's how to diagram in case you need more information with that. So we, it's been working really, really well for us. So I do that for my 6th grader and my 4th grader. So like I said, this is not the most recent version. They are still selling this and it's really good. The reason I have this is because I initially was going to have my daughter do the online, and this was what they were selling last year when I purchased this. There is a new version, and although it is not 100% different, like it's still going to be generally laid out the same, there are some noticeable differences. So it's not necessarily going to be grammar writing like this one is. It's going to be, from what it looks like, grammar writing, grammar writing. It's not as methodical as this. So for example, there's 16 chapters in this one. There's only 14 in the newer ones, but they're a little bit, some of them are longer, some of them are a little bit shorter. I actually did find the test. I bought this answer key used, and the tests are in here. There's, I believe, there's 16 tests. So this is what they're gonna look like front and back. And the newer version is not going to have 16 tests. I think it's only going to have tests, it's looking like, for the grammar chapters. So I think it's 7 or 8 tests, but it's still going to be set up in the fact of like a chapter review, a cumulative review, and a test. But every single, from what I can tell, every single chapter is going to have a chapter review and cumulative review. So you can still do that. You can still double those up. As like I said, that's kind of just what we do to help it go a little bit quicker. And then another thing is, so for example, here they would not include the test as a lesson. So that's why there's only 160 lessons in here, but there's 180 in the new one. And it's because they're including the test as a lesson. So if they were to include these in this BJU one, there would be 176 lessons. So it's not like they're adding more lessons, even though this one says 160 and the newer version says 180. That's why they include the test. Now there's not as many tests, but I did look at the teacher guide, the scope and sequence, and for example, on writing a business letter, for example, let's say looking at business letters, that would be a lesson. In the teacher's guide for the new versions, they would make that 2 lessons. They would make parts of a business letter 2 lessons, planning maybe 1 lesson, drafting 2 lessons. So they are really doubling up on lessons for the writing aspect of things. And I think that's what's stretching that 180. And again, you can do that if you need to, if you feel like your child needs to do that. But keep in mind, this is written for Christian schools. This is not homeschool specific curriculum. Now they do sell this to homeschoolers, of course, but their main target is Christian schools. Unlike something like, The Good and the Beautiful, where they are specifically designed for homeschoolers and they have that one-on-one attention in mind. This is for Christian schools, and homeschoolers, we adapt it to our needs. And so, they have to keep in mind an entire classroom, and they only have X amount of minutes before they have to move on to the next subject. So that's probably why they give several lessons for planning and several lessons for drafting. You, as a homeschooler, you can make that, you can obviously condense it and make that a lot more concise. You don't have to drag out every single lesson. You can do that, but you don't necessarily have to. And if you don't, even if there's a couple here or there that you shave off and you don't drag out the drafting of 2 lessons, even if you do that just a couple of these in the chapter, it does help shave off the total number of lessons that you will be having. And again, it will kind of help you complete that 4-day week within a traditional school year. So again, what I hope you took away from this video is that even though this is a, more traditional, definitely traditional type of curriculum, and that it is, go by this lesson, that you can be flexible, you can make it your own. I am a big proponent of that, making things your own, making it work for you, cutting out what you don't need, and sticking with what is going to work best for your family. So I hope you did find this helpful, and if you are interested in more curriculum flip-throughs and updates and homeschool day in the life and all of that fun stuff, then I'd love if you'd subscribe to my channel so that you can see more of what we're doing in our homeschool. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye, friends.